What sounds like heaven to you right now? Think about it. You can whisper it to the person next to you. Remember, you're in church. Maybe you're thinking about spending some time at the lake. That sounds like heaven. Or do we have any fall fans? Anybody fans of fall here in Northwest Ohio? Yeah, a few of you. I got one. Woo. Okay, usually you're a little rowdier than that. Okay, that's great. How many of you excited about the start of college football or football in general? Yeah? Everybody should be happy. Everybody's team won this past week, I think. So I just, subtle innuendo here, go Rockets and go Irish all at the same time. But, maybe you're like, sports ball, I'm kind of sick of sports already, or football, whatever. Maybe for you it's a book somewhere comfortable to read, or a day with nothing to do. Or maybe you like that day when you have everything checked off of your to-do list. What sounds like heaven for me, what sounds like heaven is a little date night with my wife. I don't know if you know this, but this is our 23rd wedding anniversary right here. Look at these two lovebirds. Yeah. It looks like it was taken yesterday. You weren't supposed to laugh at that. Okay. Come on. We are 23 years. That is LeBron's number that Michael Jordan stole from him. So we're really excited. The truth is, I don't honor my wife enough. She is the way better half of my life. I was telling somebody, actually, they brought it up. They were like, you won the lottery. And I'm like, you're right. I did win the lottery, which then means she's kind of paying for it if I'm on the receiving end of that. She's an incredible leader. She is a strategic thinker. She inspires people into places they never could have gone on their own. I love watching her as a mom. She is a great teammate, a best friend. The only thing keeping her from perfection is her taste in sports teams. But aside from that, I wouldn't be who I am without her, and I'm so excited to hopefully spend another 23 plus years with her. She's as close to heaven as I get, and I think we love the idea, the word heaven, we use it, but I wonder how many of you actually think about heaven. I mean, it is an important part of the end, or should I say, the beginning of what God has for us. And so we're going to talk about that today. I want to welcome you to Cedar Creek, whatever campus you are at. I know some of you are watching online or on TV, and of course we have our honored guests, the men at TOCI, tuning in with us. Those of you physically, we just put your hands together to show our online crowd and the men. We love them. We're saying hey. If you are new, my name is Ben. I'm the lead pastor, and we've been asking Jesus questions about the end of our life, the end of the world, and what will matter most in the end. And if you're kind of intrigued by that, you can catch all of that on our app or on our website. But today, our series is coming to an end. You see what I did there? Yeah, it's cute, right? Today, we're talking about heaven. And what did Jesus have to say about our eternal future? And when you think about heaven, or heaven that's mentioned maybe in the Bible, or the afterlife, what is it that comes to mind? Like visually, what are you thinking? Clouds? Happy people? Harps, like angels' wings? Maybe a family member that you miss? Peace? Things that you love? I love the answers that the kids gave at the beginning of the service. Recently, this past week, I asked AI to create pictures of heaven, and AI said, unfortunately, as an AI language model, I cannot provide you with actual images of heaven. Thanks for nothing, AI, okay? If you change the wording, though, eventually you'll get AI to create a depiction of heaven, which this is interesting, like a giant tree, a massive tree that's also on fire. That's an interesting image of heaven. Or you have what I thought was a city, but it doesn't look like a city. It looks like rocks coming out of the water that's in the clouds, okay? That is interesting. It also gave me like heavenly beings, okay? I think this is an angel singing, and it's singing to birds here. It's very colorful, very bright, very demure, very mindful, okay? Then you have this angry thing on the throne over here. I'm not sure if I would, doesn't seem happy to be in heaven, wherever this thing, God, I don't know, is. It also gave me photos like this, okay? And if this is heaven, I'm telling you now, send me back. I don't want this. I don't want to be singing in the clouds with a bunch of people for eternity. I don't have a problem with singing. It's just no, thank you. But this is kind of what we picture, like this heavenly celestial city. Andy Rechtenwald and I were looking at some of these photos and laughing, and he pointed out this little, you can't really see it, but it looks like this individual suspended in the air. I'm not sure if they're being transported out or in, or maybe this is AI's interpretation of purgatory, where you're not quite in And you're not quite out, but you're kind of like, oh boy, I hope I get to get there soon someday. I'm not really sure. But heaven is mentioned about 500 times in the Bible. It is. And in fact, when you start to read through the scriptures, you see that there are different uses or three different types of heaven that the Bible talks about. The first basic form is the word for the sky, like our atmosphere. It's in the heavens, right? That's how it's translated into English. Another way that you see the word heaven in the scriptures is the stars, the planets, in like the celestial or the night sky. It's like, okay, that's the second heaven. And then Paul talks about the third heaven, which is that eternal dwelling place where God is, and that is the heaven that we will be talking about. The eternal home of God and God's people. And so what is it that we know about heaven? Well, I'm not sure if you've realized that Jesus actually teaches us what heaven is like. And for those of you that maybe have been around church, you've probably heard some of the statements that he is going to make today. And it gives us some helpful information of what we can expect or what we can look forward to, what we can know about heaven. And so I want to look at that. And then we'll also look at a few other passages that refer to some of the specifics as well. For context, the conversation that Jesus is having, he's in the middle of a broader conversation with his disciples. And he's breaking the news that he's going to be leaving and that he's giving clues that it's going to involve betrayal and death. And if you could imagine sitting there, hearing your friend say, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be here in a couple of weeks, I think you would be a little concerned. The disciples are concerned. And here's what Jesus says to them. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. Like this has been a consistent theme over the last few weeks. Like we don't have to be afraid or troubled about the end. And that doesn't mean we don't have questions and sometimes some feelings of anxiousness, but I've heard from so many of you that when we announced this series, you were feeling a little nervous and unsure. You're like, I'm not sure I'm really into that. Like, I don't really want, it makes me anxious. And whether you've emailed me or you've had that conversation with me in the lobby, many of you have stayed and you found this series hopeful and helpful. Like we don't have to let the end times or the end distract us from God's end game. Can it be concerning? Yes. I'm not saying just like ignore what's happening in the world, but if you are a follower of Jesus, the best is yet to come. I mean, Jesus is reassuring his disciples and you and me, trust God, trust also in him. Why? Well, Jesus explains, there is more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be with me where I am. Maybe you've heard this before. In my Father's house are many mansions. Like he has a big, big house with lots and lots of rooms, right? Does this mean it's a literal mansion that you have in God's city? Well, I'm not sure. I don't know that he's talking about mansion the way that we think of it. But what jumps out at me is what Jesus is teaching. And he is making it clear that heaven is a place, not just a place on earth, okay? I know some of you jumped to that song, that's cool. But Jesus says, I'm going to prepare a place, an actual place, a dwelling place for you. Some people think that heaven is like this spiritual enlightenment space, schmoo thing. And is the 180th flying over? I'm distracted. I might run outside and watch them, okay? Anyway, what was I talking about? Dwelling place, heaven. I think there'll be jets in heaven. I'm pretty sure there will be. So some people think that heaven is imagined, right? And so it's like, I don't really need to think about heaven, or it's surreal, or it's just some like mystical experience. Earth is what's real. Well, the Bible teaches that heaven is a real place and that earth is the imitation. Let me put it this way. Heaven is Coke Zero, earth is Diet Pepsi, okay? So everything that we think is so real about, and earth is beautiful, like we should care about earth. God created our earth. So if this is his creation, we should care about it. But it's just giving us a taste of what the real thing will be someday. Quick side note, if you ever want to try that Pepsi-Coke difference thing, I tried it with my boys. My son swore that he could tell the difference, and we couldn't. So might be fun Labor Day activity for you. The interesting thing is you will be able to tell the difference between heaven and earth once you experience heaven. The Bible mentions heaven, different places, and I'm going to be jumping around a little bit to show you some of the verses that talk about what we're kind of walking through, what Jesus teaches. And one of the best pictures of heaven that we are given is at the end of the book of Revelation. Many people believe that John, one of Jesus' disciples, wrote that book and was given a vision of heaven. And he was taken in the Spirit to a great high mountain, and God showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, and it shone with the glory of God and sparkled like a precious stone, like jasper, as clear as crystal. And you were like, well, what's the city, and why is it coming from heaven? Well, this is the marriage of heaven and earth. This is God's ultimate end game. Is that the world that we are a part of will experience heaven in all of its fullness, recreating the life that we only limitedly get to experience with Him now. Heaven is a place. It's a holy city. Hebrews 11:10 says that it's a city built by God Himself. And notice some of the words that He uses. Sparkles like precious stones and crystal and gems. John goes on to describe in chapter 21 the streets of gold and the breathtaking view of the city that no eye has seen and no mind can fully comprehend, the future place that God has for us. I mean, we get glimpses of this when you see a beautiful landscape or, one of those parks or just the other day, this past week in Northwest Ohio, when that storm rolled through and my kids called me out to the front of our house and we saw that double rainbow. I don't know if you saw this or not, but we just sat there in awe of these two rainbows. I tried my best to grab a picture. It was so vibrant, I was pretty sure it ended in my neighbor's backyard, and I saw this as a sign that God was going to give the Fighting Irish a victory this weekend, so I was feeling really great, It's like, we just sat there. It was two full rainbows. You're looking at all of this, and then all of a sudden lightning starts flashing across the sky. We're trying to we couldn't stop looking at it. And as I read Revelation, and I listen to John try his best to use the limited words that he has to describe what he's being shown, I feel like he's having one of those moments where it's like, this is incredible. You don't see this every day. He sees that heaven is a real place, not just something in the clouds. It'll be a city, a dwelling place, a place that you can experience. But that's not the only thing that Jesus tells us. Jesus tells us that heaven is a place prepared. Remember what He said, I go and prepare a place for you. To prepare something it takes intentionality. It means He's making it ready for us. And so that means we don't just go up and sit in the clouds, okay? He's preparing something. There's intentionality behind our eternal home, this place that He is preparing. It's the first thing that it'll be is it is a place that all of our world will be renewed. It's a place of perfection. Paul, the Apostle Paul, writes a letter to a group of Christians in the city of Rome called Romans, and he describes what this will be like as he thinks about our created world. He says, against its will, all creation was subjected to God's curse. That is the world in which we live today. But with eager hope, the creation looks forward to the day when it will join with God's children in glorious freedom from death and decay. Now, I know it's weird to personify trees and plants and animals and oceans, but all of creation will join with us in being made new. Fruit trees, animals, rivers, oceans. Heaven will be a place prepared to be free from death and decay. And all of creation is looking forward to this day. Don't you look forward to that too? I mean, this is, our world will be made new. What we're seeing now is just a taste of what we get to look forward to someday. In Revelation, John was given a glimpse of these provisions that are being prepared for us. He says that an angel showed him a river with the water of life clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and the Lamb. It flowed down the center of the main street, and on each side of the river grew a tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, with a fresh crop each month. And these leaves from the trees were used as medicine to heal the nations. Fresh water, trees of life. There'll be a source of sustenance for us. Fresh fruit every month, apples, peaches, oranges, or something even better that we've never tasted before. Leaves that heal the nations, that heal the us versus them divisiveness that has become so rampant in our own country and around the world. I mean, friends, heaven is a place that is being intentionally, purposefully prepared. The question is, for who? It's for you. Jesus said, I'm going to prepare a place for you. He's preparing a place for the people, remember what he said earlier, who trust God and trust also in him. Those who have placed their faith, God has prepared a place specifically for you. So not only will creation be made new, not only is he preparing or thinking about and dreaming about our world being made new, he's thinking about you being made new too. The Apostle Paul wrote about this in a letter written to Christians in the city of Corinth called Corinthians, that's included in the New Testament today. He describes this transformation this way. He says, we know that when this earthly tent we live in is taken down, that is, when we die and leave this earthly body, we will have a house in heaven, an eternal body made for us by God himself and not by human hands. We're going to have a body, a physical body made new, which means, I hate to break it to some of you, we do not turn into angels. We were not created angels, we were created humans, and we will be made into eternal human beings, not sprout wings and become angelic beings, separate beings, right? We will have new heavenly bodies. I mean, honestly, the main reason I go to the gym today is I'm just trying to get a head start on my heavenly body, okay? And I'm trying to keep that dad bod right in its proper place. I mean, think about what you are looking forward to someday. Does that mean our physical bodies will change? I don't know, but Andy Rechtenwald, I have good news for you. You may get a little taller in heaven, okay? You and me both, right? I won't have these lines right here in the middle of my forehead that when I see videos of me played back, I'm like, why do you look so angry, Ben? I mean, good night. I know what some of you are thinking. You're like, Ben, you could get Botox for that. And then I would always look surprised all the time. Oh my goodness, I didn't see you there. You know, it's like, oh, hey, I don't know about you, but who's ready to leave their aches and pains behind? Like me, right? I mean, imagine what life would be like without sickness, without cancer, without death and decay. I mean, physically flawless. Like, I want that. And what's interesting is we're not just physically flawless, mentally and emotionally. We will be free from mental illness. And we're stepping into this a little bit next week with our series, Stronger Than Stress, where God wants us even now to begin to experience life the way that he intended, even in the midst of stress. In Revelation, John is given a pretty powerful vision of this emotional freedom when he says that he, God, will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All of these things are gone forever. And I know maybe you've heard people say that there's going to be no crying in heaven, but I've noticed that I don't know that that's true because it says that he will wipe away every tear, which implies there may be a moment with some tears. My theory is that every single one of us will have a moment with Jesus. For those who've placed their faith in Christ, you will have a moment with him where every hurt, every embarrassment, every injustice or abuse, every mental illness, every grief will be seen and acknowledged. Your tears will be wiped away. You will be made new. And we will experience the mental freedom that so many of us crave to the point where it'll be like, I don't know how we lived in this earthly body. It'll be so clear, physically made new, emotionally, mentally made new, but also recreationally. We're going to have purposeful work. In the Old Testament, the Jewish scriptures, a prophet named Isaiah was given a vision from God about heaven. And here's what God said. Look, I'm creating the new heavens and the new earth. No one will even think about the old ones anymore. That's how good the new heavens and the new earth will be. This will be a distant thought, like a blip on the radar. Be glad, rejoice forever in my creation. And look, I will create Jerusalem as a place of happiness. And he goes on to describe this heavenly place. No more sorrow, no more tears, all of those things that we just read about in Revelation. And then he says this, in those days, people will live in the houses they build and eat the fruit of their own vineyards, and they will not work in vain. What's he implying here? That we're going to have literal vineyards, every one of us? No, the idea is that we will have purposeful work. You won't have to deal with the Sunday scaries where it's like, oh, I got to go to work tomorrow and I don't want to. You won't have to think about all the things you didn't get done the right way. In fact, I kind of believe that we have not yet seen what is possible architecturally, musically, in the culinary arts, in technology, in leisure, educationally, environmentally. Like God created us to think, build, solve problems. We are created in his image. And I don't know that all of those fields will be in heaven, but I believe God is going to give us space to work without the hindrance of sin and death and decay. Friends, heaven is going to be a place prepared for you, for me. And I think we're going to enjoy life there the way that God intended at the beginning. But more than any of that, most of all, heaven will be a place prepared for you to experience God's presence. Bottom line. Like nothing will matter more than this. Everything else, as good as it sounds, will be icing on the cake. I mean, if you believe in God and you believe everything that the scriptures say is true about him, that he is the source of life and light, and he is the source of all that is good, that he is love and joy and peace and strength and safety, then being in his presence will be amazing. I mean, Jesus said it this way. He said, when everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be on the mansion on the beach playing golf. It doesn't say that. When everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be with me where I am. See, I think sometimes we get all excited about the stuff of heaven, but what Jesus is looking forward to the most, what Jesus knows will be our highlight, is that we get to be with him. We will get to see him for who he really is. And if that doesn't excite you, if that doesn't cause your pulse to quicken a little bit about heaven, then that might be an indicator that you don't really know much about Jesus, and that maybe your relationship with him is fractured. And today might be God's Spirit graciously and humbly nudging you to lean into that relationship with him. Because sometimes, if we're not careful, what we're really looking forward to in heaven is not God's presence. It's the thought that we might get all of our wants and our wishes fulfilled, which then is not what heaven is. Heaven isn't that you get the bigger, better version of the American dream that you've always wanted. Heaven is a place prepared for you and me to experience God's presence without anything hindering that. In Revelation, John hears the announcement that once heaven comes to earth, he says, I heard a shout from the throne saying, look, God's home is now among his people, and he will live with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them. This has been God's intent really since the very beginning. God wants to have an eternal home with his kids. And that's what the Garden of Eden was. And what you see is humanity saying, wow, we really don't want you. We think we can do it on our own. We think our way is better. And I think that's in part why our souls struggle. Because God put eternity on our heart. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, we long for that eternal dwelling place. We realize our souls intuitively know we're not at home. And I don't know if you've traveled, but you can be at the most beautiful place on earth, an all-inclusive resort, a cruise to somewhere beautiful. And is it nice? Yes. But if it's not home, you don't feel settled. I think that's why sometimes we feel so restless and unsettled. And what do you see people do? They try to buy the stuff and build the house. And I'm not opposed to that. But it's like they're trying to create heaven in a place that will never be heaven. And so we're never satisfied. There's no place like home. And God's presence is our home. John goes on. He says, I saw no temple in the city, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. Like we will be experiencing the presence of God, not in a building, but with him. And the city has no need of sun or moon, for the glory of God illuminates the city, and the Lamb is its light. Experiencing God's presence will be our prize. He will be the most beautiful sunrise, the most breathtaking sunset, the most awe-inspiring night sky. He will be beyond words. It will be so magnificent that all of the nations will bring their glory and honor into the city to give back to him. Nothing evil will be allowed to enter, nor anyone who practices shameful idolatry or dishonesty, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Like every tribe, every nation, not just the United States of America, every person, every leader that has placed their faith in Christ will bring any glory or honor that they have to give back to him. We're going to revel in it. I mean, it'll feel like the biggest celebration ever. And there will be no evil, no other gods, no dishonesty. What a place that this will be. So I'll ask you again, what sounds like heaven to you? And is this the heaven that you're allowing to reshape your priorities today? Maybe a more important question for some of you is, will you be there? Like, will you be in heaven? Because only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life will be allowed to enter. And so the question is your name written in the Lamb's book of life? I know it's kind of a funny statement, Lamb's book of life, especially if you didn't grow up in church. What is the Lamb's book of life? Is it kind of like the naughty list, where it's like, except the opposite, I mean, that's what makes it a little confusing. We tend to think of this as a book of our good works, but it's not. It's the Lamb's book of the Lamb's good works. I mean, this is a specific reference to Jesus that the first century Christians would have understood, that Jesus is our sacrificial lamb, that he gave his life on the cross, shed his blood, came back from the dead. He did what was needed, what we could not do, so that we could be a part of God's eternal family. And so this book is a list of all of the people who have placed their faith, their eternity, their whole life into the hands of Jesus. And I think sometimes we struggle to understand that. We overcomplicate it. We start to think about what we need to do or what it really looks like in our life. It reminds me of a story where an adult is teaching kids about what it means to go to heaven. And the kids kind of understand that there's nothing that you can do, but the teacher says, if I sell everything that I own and give it away to the poor, will that get me into heaven? And the kids are all like, no. They shout back, no. If I clean my house and I make it beautiful and I mow the grass and flowers, will that get me in heaven? No. And if I'm kind to everyone, my family, people at school or at work, and the animals, will that get me in heaven? And the kids all shout back, no. And so the teacher asks, if that doesn't get me into heaven, what does? And a boy from the back of the room says, you have to be dead. Boy's not wrong. And I mean, the truth is, when we die, every one of us, at the end of time or the end of our life, you will face Jesus. And the question will be, is your name in the Lamb's book of life? See, too many people mistakenly believe that heaven is a place for good people and that hell is a place for bad people, people who do bad things. But heaven is really a place where people live with God who want to be with God and realize that Jesus did what was needed to make that possible. Hell is fun to joke about, but is pretty sobering to talk about. Hell ultimately is a place where God will let the people who lived for themselves get what they wanted most. A life by themselves and for themselves. But that also means separated from God and his goodness, his peace, his love, and his joy. I don't know about you, but that sounds like hell to me. So if you're wondering, like, well, how do we get to heaven? Like, what do we do? Like, how do I know if my name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life? Jesus actually answers that question in the same passage where he talks about heaven. He says, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, trust also in me. There's more than enough room in my Father's home. I don't know who needs to hear this today, but I have a feeling there are some of you that feel like there's no room for you with God. And you look at your life and you go, well, I'm too far gone. Like, I don't know that God has room for me. Jesus says, don't let your heart be troubled. Trust in God, trust also in me. There's more than enough room for you. There's room for me. There's room for you. If this were not so, would I told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? And when everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be with me where I am. And you know the way to where I'm going. Jesus is like, you can trust me. I'm preparing a place for you to experience my eternal presence. And you know the way to where I'm going. And I love the honesty of the disciples. One of them said, no, we don't, Lord. Thomas is his name. We have no idea where you are going, so how can we know the way? I love the honesty here. I love the courageousness of Thomas. Some people call him Doubting Thomas. I call him Courageous Thomas. We talked about this past Easter. He's like, Jesus, I'm not sure I get it. You're talking, but I'm confused. And this is when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father's house except through me. And he made it clear, like so clear. The only way to put your name in the Lamb's Book of Life is to place your faith in the way, the truth, and the life. Place our faith in him and the truth that he did what was needed so that we could be a part of God's family forever. And I still don't think in this particular moment it made complete sense until later, after Jesus' resurrection, when they sat down and they were reflecting on the different things that he said, and the dots started to connect. He's the sacrificial lamb. He laid down his life for the forgiveness of sin. He came back from the dead. He's what makes it possible for us to live again. Like, he pursued us even while we were still sinners. Wow, you, God, are good and gracious and loving beyond words. You are worthy of my trust. If that's how good you are, I would spend eternity with you. So suddenly, one of the practices that he gave carried new weight. It's the practice of communion, bread and juice or wine. What they had experienced was Jesus having a meal with them, and during the meal, he took a piece of bread and he said, this is my body given for you. Take, and what did he say? Remember me. The sacrificial lamb, the way, the truth, and the life. And after the meal, he said something peculiar. He said, he took a cup of wine and he gave thanks to God for it, and he gave it to them and said, each of you drink from it, for this is my blood. Imagine being there and hearing this. It sounds weird. But then he says, this confirms the covenant between God and his people. It is poured out as a sacrifice to forgive the sins of many. Jesus essentially was saying, I'm your sacrificial lamb. And I'm going to pour my blood out so that you can be forgiven and made new, so that we could have a new eternal life with him. Jesus was announcing that he is preparing a place for you and me to experience his eternal presence. And so communion, yes, is remembering what Jesus has done. It is receiving what Jesus has done, but it is looking forward to the place that he's prepared for you. And so if you've never placed your faith in Christ and you want to begin this life-changing adventure with him, if you want to begin experiencing God now and know that your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life in heaven, then repent and believe. Repent simply means to change course. Stop trying to do it all by yourself. Stop relying on your good works, or stop focusing on your bad works and instead turn to Jesus And remember, his body and blood, his death, burial, and resurrection can make you new today. Make that your prayer right now in the quietness of your heart. You can say, God, today I want to surrender my life to you. I want my name to be written in the Lamb's Book of Life, and I can't. It's only because of what Jesus has done for me that I have any hope of being in eternity with you. Make that your prayer. And then mark today as your spiritual birthday, the start of your life-changing adventure with him. And we would love for you to share that with us if you took that step today, wherever you're watching. After Jesus said this about the wine, his blood, he said, mark my words, I will not drink wine again until the day I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. What's he saying? He's saying that someday, when heaven marries earth, there's going to be a table. And there are going to be thousands of people there. And he's saying, I'm looking forward to the day when I literally get to share a meal with the people who place their faith in me. Like Jesus was saying, I'm looking forward to the place that is going to be prepared for you, where we can experience this together, where we'll celebrate with him. And that will be such a moment, it'll be such a celebration that it'll be beyond words. It'll be a party that lasts forever. And so in the meantime, we're invited not just to remember, but to look forward to what Jesus has done for us. And so when you came in, you were given a little communion packet. I'd love for you to pull that out as I get mine out of my back pocket. If you don't have one, you can slip your hand up in the air, and our dream team would love to get you one. Somebody call these Jesus pieces. So if you're offended, you can email Andy Rechtenwald at cedarcreek.tv. If you are not a Jesus follower, this is not something you need to participate in, and you need to know, we're not judging you, okay? Like, it would be hypocritical for you to remember Jesus and not really be at a point where you say you're following him. But for those of you who follow Jesus, this is how we remember his promise. If you want to start following Jesus, use these elements as your prayer to receive his body, his blood, to remember his gift of forgiveness and grace. And so go ahead and take out the little piece of bread, the cracker thing. Jesus took common table elements that nourish our physical body to tell us that he brought his body to rescue our soul. He left heaven and came to earth out of love for each of us, to start the preparation process for us to have a place prepared for you and me to experience his presence. And so if you are thankful for that, if you are dependent upon that, if you've placed your faith in that, let's remember and look forward to the day when we will see him again. And then go ahead and open the juice. This is the symbol of his promise. The word is covenant. He made a promise by shedding his blood that you can be forgiven starting today and forever. And man, I don't know about you, but someday I can't wait to celebrate with him, face to face, enjoying this literally with him. And so let's make that our prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for shedding your blood for us. And thank you that through the shedding of your blood and your resurrection, we have the promise of heaven, a place that you are preparing, that you've thought of us. And we can't wait to fully experience you in your presence forever. And so in the meantime, in the words of the memory verse, help us to stay faithful to the end, trusting in you just as firmly as when we first believed, believing that one day we will get to share in all that belongs to you and all that you have prepared